trying to figure out what I need to know from a candidate in order to, say that yes, that he's a good fit for us, or he's a good one in programming, right? Trust me, it's a lot more difficult to sit on the other side of the table, because you want to do justice to the person sitting on the sitting opposite to you, and giving an interview with so much effort, right? So that said, I just want to talk about the opportunities, right? So we've seen a range of people in the audience today. A few of them saying 6 to 9, a bunch of them 3 to 6, and a few of them 1 to 3, right? So I'll tell you the opportunities available in the market today, right? In the industry, in the software development industry, right? So we all know developers, right? So what developers do? We write code, we build applications, and um, that's all that we know, right? So there's a lot more to it, right? There are a bunch of technologies, there are a bunch of frameworks, and so you can break them down into, you all will be aware of it, like data engineering, machine learning, artificial intelligence, and so on. But the basis and the core of all of this is problem solving, right? Writing raw code, that is very important, and that is where you will fit in as a developer. For freshers, when you give an interview, generally people look for how well you can solve a problem and how well you can write a code. Yes, you might have done a bunch of projects in machine learning, artificial intelligence, and data analysis, and so on, right? So all these other aspects are all advanced techniques of problem solving, where the problem is already solved and you're just implementing what people have already done, experts have done, and given us solutions, right? So developer is something that is actually writing code, actually solving problem in the right way. The right way to solve a problem is something that you learn through experience, right? What you write today, what the projects that you do today is I would say just 3%, 4% of what you will do in your industrial career, right? So developer is one. If you want to get into a developer role in a good company, which focuses on development, which focuses on growth in technology, which tries to teach you on how to write good code, you will have to focus on writing code. You will have to focus on reading code. You'll also have to start thinking code, right? That's one developer, where you have the likes of if I say the tier 1 companies, you'll have something like the Flipkarts and the Facebook, Amazon, Goldman Sachs, and these are all the folks that focus on development, and they hire developers, right? So that's the cream, right? But if you're not that good at coding, right, but you're very strong in technology, right? When I mean technology, it could be just the internet. You know how the internet works. You know how you're very, very fascinated with technology. You're fascinated with computers, the servers, and so on. I think DevOps is a very potential field today. I have seen a lot of developers moving towards becoming DevOps engineers, and a lot of people who do not write code, or who do not have the knack of writing code, moving into DevOps. Now, if I have to give you an example of what DevOps is, we must have all heard about cloud, right? Cloud and AWS and Azure and GCP and a bunch of them, right? So what do you do with these? You can say that a definition of cloud is a computer sitting somewhere else, and it gives you services, and you pay as you go, and it's efficient, it's scalable, it's reliable, and so on, right? But the major important fact is that it is improved, and it has helped the IT industry grow to where it is today, right? DevOps is by itself an engineering field. I expect it to see a lot more growth going forward. DevOps engineers are earning a lot more than developers as well today. There are different designations for DevOps. For example, you have DevOps engineer, DevOps specialist, DevOps manager, DevOps architect. Because in order to launch a piece of server in the cloud, you write configurations today. So it's all configuration driven. It's called infrastructure as a code, right? You launch an infrastructure through code, right? So do explore DevOps. I have my own brother who is a final year engineering student, and I advise his friends who are from CS and IS background, if they're not good at coding, look into DevOps, right? So if you want to get into DevOps, get some certifications done. There are a bunch of online certifications for AWS, GCP, Azure. I would say keep Azure aside. Azure is more Microsoft friendly, and it'll need a lot of licensing for you to learn. Choose AWS or GCP. That's where the world is being driven to, the open source world, and that's a great platform to grow. Right. Even if you are a developer, you will need to have the knowledge of a DevOps engineer, right? And after you write code, you will go to a DevOps engineer. So that's where the world is going to, right? So if you're really good at coding, if you want to become a developer, yes, developer. As a dev engineer or software engineer or whatever you want. If you're good at technology, you can move to DevOps, right? And if you're not anywhere here and you can write simple coding, you're not very good at coding, you can write simple coding. Probably you're not very good at problem solving, you can write code, you can understand code. Then probably SDET is another field. SDET is people who write automation scripts for developer testing, right? So there are a bunch of automation tools such as I'm talking about the old ones, right? Selenium and these tools are quite old. There are a bunch of new ones that are written in JavaScript. You can write JavaScript code to test and automate your applications. If I remember, I worked on something called TestNG and a bunch of them, right? There are a bunch of them in different languages. So that's also a great field for you to jump into, right? If you are not great at coding, but you can still write code and can understand code, wherein you will be taking care of, I'll come to the last part, right? As QAs, quality analysts are I would say bottom of the stack rank, where if you're really bad at coding, but you've got your technology, you understand applications, and you want to get into the software engineering field, get in as a QA. You'll be working on quality assurance of a product. You will be working with developers, with DevOps engineers, with deployments, and so on. But you will not be coding. But as and when you work along with the industry, probably you might start learning how the industry writes code, right? So I've seen QAs after a couple of years become developers, right? So that's also not a bad field to get in, right? Now, having said all of this, you will have to choose what you want to do, right? You will have to gauge yourself. Just give me a moment. Yeah. You will have to gauge yourself. You will have to figure out what is right for you. And that happens when you start practicing, right? Your marks is something that gives you grades. You write exams, the programs. Yesterday I did look into the MCA syllabus and the programming structure for the list of programs that you have in your MCA syllabus. Yeah, even we went through all of this, but that's not something that you would do in the industry, right? That's only teaching you concepts. But in the industry, it's a lot more different. So that's why you have all these platforms for learning code and writing code, such as HackerRank and Lead Code and so on, right? So all these platforms help you, right? So moving away from this topic, where do you fit in? Figure out yourself: developer, DevOps, SDET, QA. See what your strength is, get into the industry, and the industry will take you through right? Don't think you're very bad at coding, so you don't have anything else. Um, from my experience, it's okay to take your time, practice, and then get into something that you want to do and like, and not jump into something that just gives you a job, right? Cool. So, like I mentioned earlier, right? This is common for all people, right? This is common for me as well. So if I'm planning to switch my job today and take a job somewhere else, I have to do this myself as well. And that focus on programming. I think that's our dream company, right? For most of us here, and that's what we want to do, right? So you'll have to decide on your role. Now, we've spoken of all the job opportunities and the roles that you can sit in this industry. Now, figure out what role you want to be, right? If you're a DevOps, if you're SDET, if you're a QA, you got to move into that space of learning. But today we're going to focus on coding, and I'm going to help you on that because I write code on a daily basis, and I want all of us to become that, right? So deciding on your role is the key. Now the next step is to shortlist your employers, right? You know that there are a bunch of campus interviews that happen in your college. These are the bunch of people that appear in your college for campus interviews. You want to get into this company, so choose them, right? Choose what you want to get into. Choose the bunch of companies um, that you want to attend interviews or give interviews, right? If not campus interviews, you can go offline. There are a lot of platforms. I would suggest Insta Hire or Cut Short. These are real good platforms these days where you can apply for jobs and internships, right? Um, and choose your company. And once you've chosen a bunch of, let's say, a 10 or 15 or as many number of companies that you want to give interview to, shortlist them, pick up the cream, pick up. So if I say my cream would be, I would say I would want to get into Facebook, I would want to get into Google, um, probably something like Uber and so on, right? So these are the cream companies. These are the dream companies at the top right now, right? These are the unicorns of India as well. There are a bunch of unicorns as well. You can say CureFit, you can say Mintra. These are really good in technology, right? So if I have to get into these, I'll have to be very strong in writing code. And once you start preparing for these, the rest of the other companies become easier to approach, right? So I would rather prepare giving focus to these 5 to 6 companies that are a cream that I really want to get into. And if I prepare for these top 5 to 6 companies, it's going to be a lot more easier for me to approach the other companies, even if I don't get into these, right? So that's the decision again you'll have to make. Choose your company. And how do you know what sort of interviews they take? You have Google, you have Glassdoor. There are a bunch of people writing about how the interviews happen at Amazon or Flipkart or Facebook or Uber, etc. Go read about them. Lead Code has its own section of questions that Facebook asks and Amazon asks and so on, right? So they have done that segregation as well. So there's a lot of online help for you. Go and do that, right? That's step number 2. Now, you might ask me, how do you crack aptitude rounds, right? Even before we get into the coding aspects. Now, aptitude is something that you cannot prepare in a couple of months, right? At least to my experience. It needs a lot of time. You'll have to spend a lot of time trying to prepare, and you'll have to get that mindset. It has to run in your blood, right? Aptitude. You'll have to practice a lot, right? Same goes with coding, but coding is something that you can learn in a few months, right? Yes, aptitude, you should have already started. You should start a year earlier. Start answering questions and solving problems online. And I don't know if RS Agarwal still exists. So go through it and prepare for it, right? Now, aptitude is going down, as in aptitude rounds are going down in the industry. From what I see, it's the MNCs that have aptitude rounds, but the unicorns, so the unicorns such as such as the top five that I always speak about: the Amazon, Uber, Facebook, Flipkart, and so on. I don't think they have an aptitude round more often, or even if they have, I think it's just a filter criteria. But the focus for them is on writing code, right? Um, uh, Given the pandemic situations, I think most of the written rounds are also online, and probably some of them are on HackerRank, and some of them are on equivalent platforms, right? So mostly it's all coding driven. And like I told you, I would want you guys to prepare for the cream, write code, learn code, and then see, you will see yourself that it's a lot more easy for you to approach the rest of the organizations that are there in the world. All right. So that's about aptitude. You want to do aptitude, start early and keep preparing, but coding is very important. Right. Now, how do you practice coding? Right. So you have a lot of platforms today: HackerRank, LeetCode. I have myself used HackerRank and LeetCode and Geeks for Geeks. So they are very good platforms. They have over, I don't know the number. They have a lot of questions for you to prepare on different aspects, different uh, difficulty, and different algorithms, and so on. Right. So that is a very good place to start. And you know. These are good platforms that will teach you algorithms, but it is always good to solve real world problems, right? It's important that you get a developer thinking mindset, right? How do you get a developer thinking mindset is when you see a problem in LeetCode or HackerRank, and you don't try to apply an algorithm right away, right? You first think of how to solve that problem. How would you solve that if you did not have any programming language, right? How would you solve that mathematically? How would you solve that in your head, right? So that's how you'll have to start thinking on how to solve a problem. I'll get to the details of solving a problem. I'll pick up an example and do it. Um, so you'll have to you must have solved over 200 problems across different difficulties, different difficulty levels in one of these platforms, right? Choose a platform. Do not switch between platforms, right? It's okay to pay 2,500 rupees for a premium package, and you've spent a lot. We spend a lot on a daily basis, right? It's okay to spend on a coding platform, right? Go there, buy a premium package, and start solving code. A couple of months, solve 2 to 3 problems a day. Increase your difficulty level. Switch between algorithms. Switch between problem types. Dynamic programming, and etc. etc. There are a bunch of them, right? So switch between them, and program every day. You'll have to write code every day. You'll have to solve at least 2 problems every day, if you have to be the best in coding, right? It's okay to start easy. It's okay to continue for a month in an easy mode, and then switch to moderate, and then difficult level, right? And as in when you're doing this, keep applying for, if you're a final year, if you're a passed out graduate, keep applying for jobs, keep applying for internships, and as in when you attend interviews, you'll know what to focus on and what not to focus on, right? um, Now, when you pick up a problem, right, try to solve the problem in less than 20 minutes, right? Usually, the time box for a technical round of coding interview is between 40 to 50 minutes, right? And the best case scenario of you cracking an interview is solving 2 problems, right? When I go, or when my team goes into a problem solving or a coding interview, we usually start with an easy problem, and then if you're able to crack it, we'll go with a difficult problem, and if you're able to crack that, it's a strong yes for us, right? Now, so how do you do it? So you'll have to be able to solve the problem in 20 minutes, right? So that's your goal while you're practicing. um, don't get demotivated. It's going to take an hour, 90 minutes to solve a problem at the start, but solve it, right? As you keep solving, as you keep trying to solve, you'll increase your pace. Now, your goal is to come to 20 minutes, but it's okay to stick at 30 minutes or 25 minutes because you have improved, right? Focus on the solution, focus on the problem, and as you keep practicing, your pace will increase, right? Now, everyone of us know what a brute force solution is and what a efficient solution is. It's okay to write a brute force solution, right? It's okay to practice with a brute force solution. Every problem on these platforms have a solution. They have a brute force solution, they have an efficient solution, they have a super efficient solution, which is O of n, right? It's okay to write brute force. Uh, a lot of us cannot solve a problem even in a brute force manner, right? From an interviewer point of view, if you're able to solve a problem brute force, it's good enough. The interviewer will help you to make it efficient, try to improve it, try to improve the time complexity and so on, but solving the problem is the key, right? Do not think of solving the problem in an efficient manner at go one. Solve the See, if you're aware of the problem, yes, go ahead, solve it in O of n, or the best time complexity time. But if it's a new problem to you, if it's something that you're trying to solve it with brute force. And probably if you're too good at programming, as and when you're writing code, you'll figure out yourself, okay, maybe if I do this, I will improve the efficiency of my code, right? So brute force is okay. It's absolutely okay to write brute force code, right? Yeah, and the next important tip is choose a programming language. Anything is okay. People in the industry will have understanding of all the programming languages: C, C++, Java, Python, and whatever you want to. But if you've chosen one programming language, when you start practicing, stick to that, right? Always practice with the same programming language, because you get to learn the constructs, and that will help you increase your pace in writing code, right? So for example, declaring variables, declaring characters are confusing, right? So all this, as and when you practice in a given programming language, it sticks to your head. It becomes a muscle memory, right? So when you're thinking about declaring a character, your fingers start writing or typing the syntax for it, right? So that happens only when you stick to a particular programming language. Choose a programming language that can help you in solving a wide range of problems in an easier way, right? Yes, Python is a lot easier language, but you'll need to have a lot of practice to write good Python code. Because if you don't write good Python code, the interviewer can catch you easily, right? So stick to basic programming languages such as C++, C++, or Java, right? C, yes, it's good. It's one of the best languages yet known, but it does not have the constructs of object-oriented, right? So you might miss on object-oriented programming concepts if you're preparing on C. So try C++ or Java, and that should cover a lot of aspects, a lot of breadth, a lot of concepts, a lot of constructs, a lot of data structures, for you to answer your questions, answer your problems, or solve your programming questions, right? Okay. Now, how do you, when you look at a problem, right? When you see a problem in front of you, it's a typical programming question. It's a problem to solve. And how do you think about it? Do not think about it by an algorithm. Yes, you would have, a lot of us would have learned about different algorithms, right? Dynamic programming, integers and arrays and string problems and NQNs problems, and I'm just forgetting the names of the different concepts, right? But do not apply the algorithm. Okay, this is a dynamic programming question. Okay, this is something else. This is something else. Do not do that, because there might be something deceiving in the question that you don't know yet, right? So solve the problem as a raw coding problem. Look at it as a simple coding problem. So look at it as a simple problem. Solve that initially in your head initially as a mathematical problem, as a logical problem, right? As you try to solve it, you will end up yourself figuring out what algorithm it is, right? A lot of time what happens is you would have practiced like 100 or 200 problems, and then when you see the question you'll say, okay, this is similar to this, so this is a dynamic programming problem, so do not do that. So you see a question, you answer it, you try to approach it as a raw simple programming question, right? Try to understand the nuances of the input and the output. There could be something deceiving, there could be some edge cases that is not solved by one concept but can be solved by a different concept, right? So approach it as a programming problem. See what is the right thing to start with, and then as you keep thinking, if you have practiced enough, you will find the right solution, right? um, that's how you apply algorithms. You don't go and start with an algorithm, right? You start with an algorithm, you go with a syntactic no, a semantic approach on how to solve the algorithm, and you miss out on how to solve the problem, right? So that's another thing that you'll have to keep in mind. Now, learn data structures, right? Data structures are very, very, very important. um, uh, Data structures start from a simple array to to a complicated heap, right? You'll have to be very sure of how to solve a problem using an array, using an integer array, using a string array, and you'll have to have understanding on how to solve problems with linked lists and map and hashes and so on. Now, again, in your syllabus, in your MCA syllabus, you would have come across problems where you programming questions where it is associated to a concept, right? For, let's say, write a program to show how a linked list works. But in the real world, or in a competitive world, it doesn't happen like that. The whole use of a data structure is on how you apply it, right? You'll have to understand how you apply a particular data structure and where to apply it and how to use it, right? Now, for example, a question, a problem that can be solved with an array of integers can also be solved with a list of integers, a linked list of integers, right? Something that can be solved with q can also be solved with a linked list, right? Now, when you're practicing, I would want you to try applying different data structures. So let's say you picked up an array problem, right? And you solved it. Too good. Now try to apply, let's say, a linked list instead of an array, right? See how it would work. See what improves. See how your code improves, right? So you'll have to apply a particular data structure in a program to understand how it works. Just learning the data structure does not work. Just understanding a program that demonstrates how a data structure works does not work, right? You'll have to, the whole idea of inventing data structures is because we want to use them. And how do we use them, and how do we apply them is the key to the whole competitive world, right? So that's what people try to test you. So that in a technical interview, a lot of people post a problem to you, and the interview, I at least myself will know, the moment you choose the data structure to solve the problem, I'll know if you'll be able to solve the problem or not, and then I'll just switch to another problem, right? So how you apply a data structure for a programming problem is very important. So try different data structures. Try where, see, hash maps and maps are super useful to improve the efficiency of your program, right? Linked lists are too good when you don't know the size of a input, right? So these are all simple examples. When you actually jump into something complicated, it's important that you apply the right data structure, right? Okay. Okay. Now the next thing is, uh, we all used to write programs on a piece of paper, right? I also love to write on a piece of paper. Back during my interview days, I gave my interviews on paper. for writing code right now. Given the advent of technology and the internet and the pandemic situations, we're all writing solutions on coder pads and um, online platforms and IDEs and so on, right? So um, it's very important you practice online. You pick up. So one of these platforms, like I mentioned, HackerRank, LeetCode, they have their own um, editor. Now, if you have a premium subscription, you will get access to debugging tools and tracing tools and so on. I would suggest that, but if you are not sure of that yet, so it's okay. Choose a coding editor, pick up a programming language and practice with that, right? And that's how the world is going to be going forward. Yeah. And you should practice a lot such that you don't spend while writing code in a competitive exam. You don't spend your time looking at the keyboard, right? You'll have to practice typing. You'll have to practice coding, and all this will happen only when you actually practice and prepare on your computer or on your laptop, right? So when we write code, you think of a code and you just write it, right? You don't think of what alphabets to choose or something, right? This is very trivial, but I want to repeat it. You'll have to be very good at typing, and otherwise you'll lose a lot of time figuring out on how to type and so on, right? And use shortcuts. There are a bunch of shortcuts to navigate between words and lines and so on. So if you're at the start of the line, and if you want to move to the end of the line to make a change, or put a semicolon or make some changes, you cannot hold the arrow key and wait for it to move, right? There are shortcuts to help you move faster and save time, right? So work on those shortcuts, learn those shortcuts, and practice with those shortcuts, right? And moving to the next part of it. Okay. Yeah. So now this is about preparing for a coding portion of things, right? Like technically how you would prepare yourself learning code, right? I've given you a lot of suggestions. There could be a bunch more that I might be missing today, but this is something that is very key and something that I look for in candidates, right? I want to jump into one specific portion of solving a problem. I'll come to that when we move to the next section. Now I'll move to a different section where we're going to talk about other aspects, right? What else apart from coding, right? Now we know what we have to prepare for, how to prepare for, and where to prepare for with respect to writing code, right? Now what else apart from coding, right? You'll have to get your fundamentals straight. So fundamentals as in your OOPS concepts, your networking, operating systems, database concepts, and all of this. It won't be the questions and the topics around this won't be as complicated as writing code, but you definitely have to understand them, right? Especially OOPS concepts, because in various interviews, there's something called a technical design round. The design round will focus on how you can design a solution, right? It's not about writing the complex piece of code. It's about how you break your code, how you can design your code in a manner that it can, it is object oriented and it can, scale well, right? Now, how do you do it? Every time I ask what is a class, right? In my interviews, people say class is a blueprint of a modern world entity, right? That doesn't answer the question, right? That is a bookish answer, right? Do not go with the definitions, right? It doesn't add any value. Explain it in your personal words, right? On how you understood the topic, right? For example, a class, right? Pick up an example. It could be a trivial example as a bike, right? As a vehicle. That's a trivial example. But I would be happy if you take a real world example of, for example, a computer, right? So pick up something that you can relate to, and you can give an example and talk about it. Do not give definitions, right? So the same thing goes with operating systems and networking concepts. Networking and operating system, I understand. You cannot relate a lot to the real world, because it's more inside the computer. But yes, you can talk about it with sense, right? So if you're talking about something on networking, you can talk about packages. You can talk about how the internet works, how data is being transferred from one place to the other, right? So that's something that you can learn on, right? And Yeah. So and the other thing is, uh, with respect to technical strength, you'll also have to understand and learn about how the internet works, right? It's very important. The whole world is using internet today, and as technical as software engineering graduates, if you don't know how the internet works, then I would say it's a shame, right? If you don't know how a page renders on Google Chrome when you say google.com or facebook.com, then that's a shame, right? You'll have to understand. Without the simple knowledge, you cannot sit in an interview, right? So understand how an internet works. Understand how the basics of how an application works, how a mobile application works, right? It's not always the same. You might have done a mobile application project in your final year, right? And you would have generated an APK or an IPA file, and deployed it on your mobile and so on, right? But that is not the end to it. You'll have to understand in real world. Go Google and figure out how Instagram is built, right? What technologies it uses, how it communicates between its mobile application and the server, right? How quickly can it load posts, right? So as soon as you open Instagram, there are billions of users on Instagram. How does it not lag? How does it how do they share databases, right? You just So I wanted to come to this, right? So you'll have to be curious. Curiosity is something that can lead you to where you want to go in your life, right? So if you see something, if you see a new app, so even pick up Dream 11, right? If you are playing Dream 11, if you're creating your own fantasy league teams, try to understand what the technology is behind it. Try to understand how it works, right? So Dream 11 has so many users, so many teams, 10 teams per user, and so many teams. And how does it work? It's so fascinating. It's so exciting. Let me try to learn about it, right? That's how you learn technology. That's how you learn how things work, and that will really help you in your interviews, in your technical interviews, right? So be curious, and try to understand and learn what you see technically, and what you really want to do in your life, right? And now, the next important thing and a worry for a lot of us is communication, right? You might think communication, you're very bad at communication, right? But understand this real fact that there's a difference between a communication problem and a language problem. If you do not know English, then that's a language problem. If you do not know how to explain something to someone in any language, that is a communication problem, right? So improve your communication problem, your language will grow by itself, right? It's okay. So a lot of times it's okay to switch to a known language in your interview if the interviewer is also okay with it. But the communication is very important. If you're not able to tell what you think while solving a problem or while answering a question that the interviewer asks, then that's a problem. It's okay if you don't answer it in English, or if you stammer while talking in English. It's okay. It's absolutely okay, right? But communication is important, and understand there's a difference between communication and language. If you don't know English, it's okay. But if you don't know communication, then that's a problem that you'll have to work on, right? Um, and Coming to your projects, right? So keep working on mini projects, keep working on freelance projects. Um, um, you have a lot of time, trust me. when you join work, when you join the industry, you will not have as much as time as you have when you're studying, right? It's really difficult to find time. Though we have time, we are already exhausted writing code, writing, solving problems, and so on. We just want our own time, binging Netflix or whatever that is, right? Now that you are already having time, it's important that you work on many projects. It's very exciting to work on many projects. If you've never done one before, start with something new. Start with the first one that will drive you through, and you have to work on many projects, right? And do not work on the downloaded ones. Yes, I've also come through that in during my college times. Do not download projects. Do not pick it up from project centers, or um, and do not work on this trivial database management projects, right? Library management and etc. Work on something that is fascinating. It does not have to be involving database or end-to-end technologies, right? It could be a simple solution, a simple prototype, right? And as a hobby project now, I'm working on, for example, editors, right? You have your coding editors, where you can write code and you can run it, and you also have debuggers in it. Now, how do you dry run or trace a code, right? So you dry run or trace a code by writing the output of every line on a piece of paper for every input or every iteration, right? So I'm trying to build a small piece of prototype or a small piece of tool that can trace your program and print each stage of output on a printing screen, right? So that's something that I'm working on, right? So it's okay if it exists in the real world. If people have already done it, it's okay to explore it again and solve it by yourself, right? So work on interesting and exciting projects. It's okay if it is not a big project. It's okay for it to be a small solution or a prototype or a tool, right? Work on many projects. That is something that will take you ahead. AI and ML, they sound very nice. They sound very good to put on your resume. Okay, work on a couple of AI and ML projects, but like I told you earlier, they're all advanced programming concepts where the actual solution is already written. You're only implementing what is already written, right? Um, so write code, write and build projects that actually involves problem solving, right? um, okay. Now, after all of this preparations, I would want you guys to take peer interviews, right? You definitely, if you're in college, you'll have 3 to 4 group of friends, right? So pick up a friend or pick up a relative who works in the industry. Pick up somebody, right? And ask them to interview you, right? If it is your friend from your class, ask them to interview you. Ask them to give you a programming question, and you program in front of them, time box that process. And when this other person is sitting on the other side and seeing you write code, even he will learn how to code, or he or she will learn how to code, and even you will do that. So exchange that role. Do peer interviews. Peer interviewing is very, very effective, and you won't have the pressure, right? You don't have to be nervous in a peer interview. So as and when you keep doing this, it'll become a practice, it'll become a habit of your life, and you won't be nervous in your real interviews, right? And similarly for mock interviews, there are a bunch of online platforms that offer mock interviews for money and for free. I've not explored it much, but I know it exists. So do take mock interviews, and have that experience of having an interview or taking an interview with you, so that it doesn't sound new, um, it doesn't surprise you on your first interview, right? So do all of that. And with respect to writing code in your tests, write neat code. It's very important you write code very neatly, because it improves the reading of the interviewer, right? So if I'm able to read a program quickly, and if it's a brute force solution, I'm very happy, and I would at least call the person for an interview, right? So write code very neatly, um, and dry run and trace your code, even if it is online or on paper, before you submit it, before you say it's working, it'll work, um, it's completed and submitting. Dry run your code, trace your code, see at least for a couple of inputs it should work. And probably a lot of times when you dry run, you might find a lot of syntactical issues, you might find a lot of issues that that could have been very obvious, that you might have missed out, right? So dry run is very important. um, Try doing that. And while writing code, use meaningful variable names. Do not say int x, int y, int j, int I, and so on. When you start using, and when you practice with meaningful variable names, it becomes a lot more easier to explain the problem, explain the solution, and also to understand the problem and the solution while you're writing code, right? So do that. Now, that's it on this preparation part um, um, of the section. I'll be moving to the next section. If you have any questions, you can post now, or we can take it later as well. Okay. So moving ahead, tackling the written test, right? It could be paper or online. So you will have to focus on the real problem, right? For example, there's a given program, a problem for you to solve. Focus on the real problem. Do not spend time, do not write code, do not do anything with printfs and scanfs and scanning the input and printing the output. It doesn't matter at all, right, for somebody who's seeing the code. And focus on writing the actual logic. Focus on focus on the function that really matters, right? Now, and when you're writing code, practice also in this manner, where you break down your logic into a bunch of functions and methods, so that it's easier for you to write and debug and trace and explain, right? For example, if you are I'll take a simple example of a prime number, right? How to figure out if a program, if a number is a prime number or not, right? So you will have an iterator, probably a for loop. I'm talking about print all the prime numbers between 1 to 10. Okay, so you'll have an iterator between 1 to 10, right? A for loop or a while loop or whatever you choose it to be. Now that could be your only line of code, and inside that you could just pass the number to a function, right, which only returns whether it is prime number or not, right? And within that function, you can have another function which says, this is just an example, right? So a mod of 2, right? You don't want to write that in your code, right? Push it to a different function so that you can keep reusing it elsewhere. Now, what this helps you in is it makes your code more readable and more easy to explain, right? And easy to debug for yourself, and the interviewers will like that way, right? So write a lot of functions, write a lot of methods. Right. I told you, write neat code. That's also very important in a written test, right? And from my experience, complex code written neatly move higher up the stack rank, right? So it's very obvious that an interviewer, after your written test, they stack rank you, and very well neatly written code and good solutions always go up the stack rank and has better chance of clearing the next rounds as well. So keep that in mind, right? So when you see a problem while writing a test, if you are aware of the problem, if you've solved it before, try to go for the efficient solution, like I mentioned before. But if you're not aware of the problem. This is the first time you're trying to solve it, and you're doing all the mathematics and logics and everything. Try to solve with the brute force. All right. And yeah, that's most of it with the written test. And stick to a programming language. Your practice makes it easier for you to understand on how to write the best constructs, and define the best way to write a piece of logic is by practice, by choosing a particular programming language, right? So people often tend to miss on return types, and how you return a uh, particular function. What is a return type and how do you capture it, and so on. So work on return types, work on how do you, where you need a return type and where you need a no return type, avoid, and so on. Work on that. And while tracing and dry running, you will find a lot of mistakes in your problem, like I mentioned. Learn how to trace. It's an art. It's not easy, right? Especially practice tracing recursive functions, right? You might do tree traversal, right? It's a very simple 3-line code, right? But take a tree that has 15 nodes. Take a binary tree that has 15 nodes and try to recursively trace that function, right? It's not an easy job. The first time you might not get it, but when you get that thinking on how and mindset on how to trace a recursive function, you'll be able to easily solve a lot of problems that involve recursion, right? Okay. Now, that's about the written test, right? Now, when you're actually facing an interviewer for a technical round or a coding round, I have some tips for you guys, right? Um, so keep this in mind, right? So introduce yourself technically, right? No interviewer, especially a coding round interviewer, is interested in your school, college, hometown, parents, sibling, and information, right? There's no point. They just ignore all of that information, right? So hit the right nail. Talk about how strong technically you are. What are your projects? What is your strength in coding? What is your strength in technically, and what are your weaknesses? Talk in depth about your project. So that's very key, right? I have spent a lot of times talking about a candidate's project for like over 10 to 15 minutes, and that itself gives an interviewer on how strong technically you can be, right? Trust me, you go and say that I did an Android project or an ML project, I picked up the ML algorithm from this site and I applied it. That doesn't work, right? You'll have to get into the depth. How does that algorithm work, right? So if you have really worked on it honestly, then you will be definitely able to answer that. So that's the depth you'll have to get into. And your project must be intriguing, intuitive, and very interesting, for to strike a conversation with the interviewer. And that itself will give a lot of confidence for the interviewer to make a decision on whether you are in or not. Now, a project can give a lot of confidence, even if you're not able to solve the problem that he or she gives you. The project that you've done and the way you have explained it can add a lot of bonus points to being selected or not, right? So a project is very important. Okay, when a problem is presented to you, right? This is true for both written test and a face-to-face interview. Take a minute to understand what the problem is, right? Try to understand the inputs. Try to understand the different types of inputs and the different type of outputs, right? Check for edge cases, right? And when you've understood this in a face-to-face interview, repeat the same thing to the interviewer, right? Tell him that, see, this is what I've understood and this is what my output must be, right? Am I right? Is my understanding right? Are we on the same page, right? It's important to get this consent, because the interviewer also has positive note saying that, okay, he at least understood the problem, right? If you simply look at the program and you start writing a for loop, it doesn't make sense, right? So converse, talk to the interviewer and see if you both are on the same page, right? Now, um, you'll have to talk while solving a problem. This is very, very important in a technical round. Talk while you solve the problem. Think loud. It's okay to correct what you think and you say. It's okay to say, okay, I think I need a for loop here, and that for loop, the limit is up to n. Okay, no, the limit is up to m. I think I was wrong. It's okay to say that, right? But it's very important that you think loud and you keep talking, right? Do not bore the interviewer. The interviewer is sitting in front of you. He cannot understand your code until he reads the entire code. But while you're writing, if he's not with you, then that's a big problem. So keep talking, keep saying that, okay, I've solved this portion of the problem, then I'm moving to this, right? I hope I'm going in the right direction. Please help me if I'm not doing that, right? So that I can correct it right away, right? Keep saying, keep talking, right? Now, the next important thing is breaking down your problem and approaching it phase by phase, right? So I need to share my screen again. Just give me a moment. So I'm going to pick up a problem quickly, and I'm going to show how you break down that piece of code, right? So I've just taken a very simple example of reversing a string, right? Now it's not a simple reverse; it's a reverse with variation, right? So it says, given a string s and an integer k, reverse the first k characters for every 2k characters, right? Now a lot of times even I don't understand the problem by reading the problem statement. So jump into the examples. So what it says is k is 2, and the overall problem statement is, so you'll have to swap the first two characters, and then you'll have to skip the next two characters, and then you swap the next two characters. I mean, not swap as in reverse, right? Because it's 2, it's a swap here, right? So that's the problem statement. Now, how do you approach this problem, right? If you're new to coding, you might be thinking of a reversal algorithm that you wrote in college, reversing problem, and okay, I know how to do reversing, and I have to start from the last of the string and move on and so on, right? So, but the best way to approach this problem is first break down the problem, right? There are two problems here. One is you have to reverse a string, and it's not just reversing the entire string. You'll have to reverse the substring, a bunch of substrings in the string, right? And how do you formulate that substring is by the length that is given to you in terms of k, right? Now there are two problems. One is, how do you break these substrings, right, in a given string, and how do you reverse? Now I've broken down the problem into two parts. Now I have to solve two portions of the problem. One is, how do I break it, and the other is, how do I reverse it, right? Now uh, if there are multiple ways to approach this. If the first time I saw this problem, I was thinking, okay, I'll have a boolean flag which says, currently I am reversing, and then after a bunch of iterations, after k times of iterations, I will switch that boolean to say, I am not iterating now, right? So that is one way to do it, right? So there are different ways to solve a problem, but the key is breaking down the problem. Now we've broken down the problem here into two phases. There's another third phase which you will eventually reach to, right? How do you iterate through the string, right? But that is a very common problem that you will have to anyway do. But the core of the logic is to break the problem into the core logical solution, like we've done here. So let me show you the solution that these guys have given, where this is the small portion of code where it is actually reversing the string, and the for loop by itself handles handles on skipping the characters in between. the number of characters that it has to skip based on k, right? So that is being done in the for loop itself. So that's what this person has done. He's written a very simple solution where he starts with 0 and goes up till the length of the string, and every time he jumps by the number of times of k, right? And inside this is a solution of problem one. How do I skip um, the substrings, right? The second problem he's solving here, which is a simple problem of its own, where he's just trying to reverse the string, the substring, right? Now, in a best practice, I would simply put this whole portion of the code into a simple method and just call that method here, right? It'll make my code look a lot more readable and understandable, right? So this is very important. Break down your program into as many functions and methods as possible. Break down your problem into different phases and solve one phase at a time. And when you solve one phase, get a consent from your interviewer if it is a face-to-face. I think good interviewers will definitely help you around that, right? And they'll talk to you around that, right? So that's very key. Breaking down the problem into multiple different phases, right? That's on writing and solving a face-to-face coding interview, right? Am I missing anything? Let me just check. Okay, I think I've covered most of what I wanted to do, and the next thing I wanted to talk to you guys about is takeaways from an interview, right? Um, Not all the interviews go as we want, right? That doesn't mean that you are a bad candidate, or the company was bad, they did not recruit you well, or they were partial, or whatever it is, right? There's no right or wrong after an interview. You only have to give the best in your interview. Most often than not, it'll be the best outcome. But if it doesn't, right, there are a few takeaways from an interview, which is the type of problems that the company asked, and the ways you try to approach it. You would have identified your own weaknesses, you would have identified your own areas of improvements. Do not just think that you failed an interview, but do keep a note on what is that you'll have to take back and prepare for the next one, right? Or even if you've cleared an interview, it is very important to understand what is the takeaways from that interview. And always, when you clear an interview, you don't stop there, right? It's okay to give a couple of other interviews. So the takeaways are very important. Do not get dejected. I know when we don't have a job and it's a crisis, it's hitting us at the right place, but do not get dejected. Practice and work, and every interview has a takeaway. Carry it home, make a note of it, work on it, and prepare again. And nobody is left out, right? Everybody will find a job. And now, if I see when we were passing out, there were only we were a group of 7 to 8 in our friends group, and like three people were placed, right? So we were all worried what will happen to us. So 6 months, 1 year, keep practicing, keep doing the right thing, you will get there. Right now, all of us are placed, and we're all working. So you won't go jobless. Just do the right thing, and you will get placed. Right? Any questions, guys? I think I'm done so far. Let me check the chat panel. What's your opinion on data science when person is not good at coding? So what is data science? Data science is understanding data, right? I also do a lot of data engineering. So there are different sides to data engineering or data science, right? One is analysis, data analytics, and the other part is data engineering, right? If you want to really become a data analyst, you need some portion of coding, yes, right? But you'll have to be very strong in mathematics. That's a choice that you'll have to make, right? If you want to get into data engineering, data engineering does expect some amount of coding experience, though it does not let you code, or as in not let you code, as in it. There's no coding exercise in a data engineering problem per se, but it involves at, at a very rare cases it does. So, for example, in data science and data engineering, you will do a lot of ETL, extract, transform, and load, right? Which is more of understanding the data and moving data from one place to the other and transforming them and so on. But when you deal with big data, you'll have to write a lot of big data processing techniques in Spark or in MapReduce and so on, for which you will need to understand programming. There's no software engineering science that can do without basic understanding of coding. I hope that answers your question. Anything else, guys? Okay. Thank you. Thanks a lot for listening to me. I know I short out of time. I planned it for an hour. But anyway, it was great talking to you guys. Thank you for the opportunity. Okay, I have a question just before that. Okay, let's say I do a certification on AWS, SAP, DevOps, so on. There are a very few companies who hire freshers for such roles. My question to you is how can I gain prior experience in a similar field or domain? So DevOps, DevOps and other such tools, you cannot go to a product-based company. You cannot go to MNC and say that I am a fresher and I want to get into DevOps, right? Yes, we accept DevOps freshers. You can apply for our company, Ashton by Deloitte, anytime, anybody for any role, right? We accept freshers, right? But if you talk about the likes of Amazons and so on, they do not accept freshers for DevOps, right? But there are companies that offer DevOps solutions. Let me give you an example. Let's take Bounce, right? When you've used Bounce as a scooter, right? Bounce scooters, the rental bikes. So we have worked on Bounce, right? We have when Bounce was a simple startup, now they've grown big. When Bounce was a simple startup, they did not manage their DevOps. They did not have DevOps engineers, right? What they did was what generally product startups do is they outsource the DevOps engineering work, right? So there are DevOps oriented organizations. I do not have the name right up in my sleeves. Just give me a moment. I have worked with, there's a company called Minjar, right, which we have worked along, right? It works only on DevOps. It gives solutions for DevOps. There's another company called PowerUp Cloud, right, which only works on DevOps. They only have DevOps engineers. They train DevOps freshers and they groom them, right? So you will find such companies that focus on DevOps and help you with training and freshers, right? Yes, you'll need to have that understanding on how cloud works, and you'll have to have done your homework to get yourself cleared and get into such companies. Okay, any other questions, guys? We'll take next 3 minutes. Hmm. Oh, just as we wait for the next 2 minutes, I'll just brief you on the technologies and the frameworks that are good these days that you can, work on. If you try learning about Spring, if you're Java oriented, try learning about Fast API or Django or Flask if you're Python oriented. From the UI front, see if you can learn about React, Angular. See if you can do some basic projects around this, and that'll help you. Right? Okay, one more question from Skanda, which is when companies mention experience, do they consider overall experience or are they looking for a particular domain or technology? So when you read or go through a job description, right? Um, they would have posted requirements which says 3 to 5 years of experience, and then read about the rest of the job description, right? It's okay. They would have said we need an expert in Java or Python. If you are an expert in Java or Python and you have overall experience of 3 to 5 years, it's okay to apply and talk to them, right? But if even if you have the overall experience of 5 years, or if you have the domain experience of 5 years and you're not expert, or you do not meet what the requirements talk on the job description, then there's no point in applying. Okay, I think I'm done. I'll just drop in my email ID. If you guys have any questions, just drop me an email. I will definitely answer those questions when I find time. All right, and there's something that I can that I want to offer here for as an appreciation for the effort you guys have taken to come and listen to me on a at 10 a.m., which is too early for me. So follow all the principles of cracking a coding interview and work on projects. And if you can summarize your project and you think if you've done a very exciting and a wonderful project, and you think you're good at coding, you can prove that to me. Write an email to me, and I will definitely refer you in my company.
That's good.
That's all I had. Thank you, guys. Thanks a lot.
Any more questions, students? Okay. Okay, thank you, Kaushik. That was a wonderful session. You have given a lot of insights to the students as to how they have to crack the coding interview. And a small appreciation from us to you for
Thank you.
for having this session. It was a successful one, and we appreciate you to come and talk to our students. I know it was too early for you. Students, actually, he is a very busy guy.
I'm not busy.
Even as a student, when we saw him, I wouldn't tell, but he was very busy even then. From those days, I'm seeing him. It is good that he managed and gave you good inputs. Do follow him, and any help, as he has told you, you can definitely contact him. He has shared the mail ID as well, so you can contact him. Thank you, Kaushik.
Thank you, man. Thanks a lot for the certificate and the appreciation. There's one more question on the chat panel which says CS students can apply. Can MCA students also apply to that? If you know to write code, apply. That's it, right? I,
That's true.
okay, so and yes, so uh, also focus on your passion, guys. That's very important. I do a lot of things outside my work. Work is also a passion. I work with a lot of uh, product groups that we try to innovate and vision products. We are not yet there in developing a product yet because we start with something we work on for a few months and then we drop it and so on. We are still in the nascent phase of building a lot of products, and also work on other passion that you have, like I do on writing scripts and working on films. So nothing is wrong to work on it, and and see what is best for you. Okay, there's one last question: how to figure out which technology to choose to start learning? Okay, this is a good question. Where did I start? I started with something that, okay, choose, I would say don't choose the technology, right? This is something that we tell our clients as well, tell our customers, or and tell our products as well. So don't tell that this is the technology